Well, I mean, but when you look at the Volt, I guess Chevy came out with the Volt. It's heavily subsidized by the government. There's all sorts of tax breaks to make it appealing, and yet
Yeah,
I
because
think
nobody
that,
wants to buy it. They have to give you a $7,500 tax credit to make people buy them.
and I think they've only sold about 1,000 of them last year.
Well,
I
that
mean,
is true. It's a little bit deceptive number in that that's all they made. They've sold everything they've made. They're not sitting unsold on the lots.
well, it's still. Believe, don't you think if they could have sold 100,000 of them, they would have made them? I
Yes,
think
I do
that.
think I do think that. But yeah, I just because this is well, I'm a professional at this. I want to give you at least kind of some honest numbers. There is but the hybrids. The data that came out today because of these cafe standards. They're talking about this in the news today. Is that only like 2% of America's the fleet that's on the road, the passenger car fleet that's on the road, only about 2% is hybrids. So, we have these more not cost effective, but fuel efficient models available, and they're not selling. They're not what people want to buy in America.
And isn't it? I mean, the fact about hybrids, they're great if you're going to drive 25 miles an hour or less. But we're a highway country. You get out on the highway, the Pierce is no better than an SUV in gas mileage.
I mean, they're a little better, but they definitely don't get the mileage that was advertised. My sister has one, and I've talked to her about it. And is it what's advertised? No, it just it totally depends. I mean, there are some benefits, and I don't want. It's not about bad mouthing a hybrid. If someone wants that, that's fine. But they need to realize that's not the panacea, because the hybrid, with all the batteries and all of that, has a whole different set of problems for the environment. It's not a one is right and the other is wrong, but we don't have an energy shortage in this country. And that's a key thing that people need to understand. Like I said, this woman at this social event I was at in Dallas said, we have got to get off of oil. I'm like, why? Why? Well, because we're running out of it. No, they keep finding more of it. And then we also have what's called resource expansion. And resource expansion means we use what we have more wisely. I don't know how old you are, Mike, but I'm going to assume you're somewhere in my age ballpark. But think back to when you were a kid. What kind of mileage did your dad's car get? Probably, if it was anything like what my father drove, it was like 8 miles to a gallon.
Yeah, big Chrysler, when a Chrysler was a Chrysler.
We had a big Lincoln Continental, but we got like 8 miles to a gallon. Well, that was what everybody got. Okay, so now I'm driving a big SUV. Well, it's not big. I'm driving a mid-size SUV, and I get 20 miles to a gallon. So I can go more than twice as far on 1 gallon of gas. Now, if I really wanted to, I could drive a Jetta diesel, a Volkswagen Jetta diesel or whatever it is, and I could get 50 miles to a gallon. Okay, that would be my choice. But so then I'm getting 5 times what my father got out of 1 gallon of gas. So we use the resources much more wisely now than we did then. So A, we keep finding more, and B, we use it more wisely. We get far more out of it than we used to.
And you're absolutely right. And I remember when I was a kid, my mother would send me up to the Esso gas station with a gallon can with 35 cents. And I would get a gallon of gas for a quarter and a Coke for 10 cents.
Okay, so now I know you are about my age.
Yeah, in the mid-30s, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And as I told you yesterday, I'm in the plastics industry my whole life, and we use natural as our catalyst to make plastic. And
sure,
I always have
people don't realize.
That petroleum is everywhere.
Yes.
And why this president has chosen to turn the faucet off of drilling and finding and excluding areas just raises the price.
It does just raise the price. And, you have to look at what is his motive. Why would he, as you said, why would he do that? And when you spend every day studying this stuff as I do, and you look at the regulations. I mean, currently, just this week, what we're looking at in the ozone ruling and the transportation ruling and the offshore drilling, and you look at all of these things, and you have to go, what is his goal? And the only thing you can really conclude is that I had a guy in my office building, a new guy I just met a couple days ago, and he turns out he's from Germany, and he asked what I do, and I told him what I do, and he sort of was kind of attacking me in a way, verbally attacking me. He was very kind to me in the hallway, but he was, kind of having an animated discussion here, and he said, "Well, what do you think? What are the goals?" And I said, "Well, really, when you get right down to it, it's like socialism. I mean, I don't like to really use that term, but I prefer to think of it as control. But the reality is, if you look at America on a bigger scale, when you take away energy, you take away freedom. And if you look at what the policies are through an energy filter, everything that is coming out of this administration is about making energy more expensive and less available."
Correct.
And, it's scary. It's scary for the future of this country and manufacturing. You said you're in plastics. You've got to have cost-effective raw materials, the source materials, but you've also got to have cost-effective energy to be able to run the equipment to manufacture. And that's changing rapidly.
Marita, can we take a call?
Sure.
Okay. Ed, is that caller still there? No. Okay. Caller, are you with us?
Yeah, I am.
You have a question for Marita Noon.
Well, I just wanted to point out that gas isn't really going up. It's really the value of your money that's going down.
True.
If you had a silver quarter in 1946, you could buy a gallon of gas. And if you had a silver quarter today, it would be 1/4 of an ounce. And silver is selling for $40 an ounce right now. So you could easily go out and buy a gallon of gas.
Yes, you could easily, and that's a very valid point. That it's that the value of our dollar has gone down, and therefore we're buying an international commodity, which is gasoline, with our dollar, and so it takes more dollars to buy that international commodity now than it used to because the value of the dollar is down, and that's appreciate you pointing that out.
And is that because the value of our economy is so much smaller now? The value of our...
A lot of it is we're printing money.
Well, there you go.
I mean, just like the caller pointed out, if you took 1/4 of an ounce of silver and bought gas, what you can buy gasoline-wise with 1/4 of an ounce of silver 50 years ago versus today is somewhat comparable. And so it's not that the gasoline is more expensive, it's that the dollar is worth less.
Go ahead, Bob.
Actually, you could buy about at least double the amount because you can buy gas for $5 a gallon anywhere. Silver's $40 an ounce right now, so you could buy 2 gallons of gas for what you paid for 1 gallon of gas back in 1946.
Interesting.
And here's another thing about that. This all is a result, you're talking about the deficit and all that. There's no provision to pay on the deficit. There's only a provision to pay on the interest on the debt. So there's no provision to pay down the deficit at all by that agreement, the Federal Reserve Act. So all this talk about paying down on the deficit, they're going to have to go back in and redo the Federal Reserve Act. And what we do as a country is we borrow money from the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve doesn't have any money. All they do is make a bookkeeping entry. So the American public is paying $300 billion a year on the interest on the debt when the Federal Reserve didn't lend us anything. They didn't lend us gold. They didn't lend us silver. They didn't have any commodity to lend us. They just made a bookkeeping entry and allowed the federal government to print money. And the government likes that because they don't have to raise taxes or tax the people. And so it's just really a big, huge Ponzi scheme.
Bob, thanks for calling.
All right.
Bob has called before, and he is very intellectual about the Fed and how it's destroying our country. And you know what? I guess he's right because nothing
No,
is
I think
holding.
he is right, and I think the interesting thing is that Americans are really waking up to that now, and this debt ceiling crisis situation. That's kind of off of energy. But I wrote a piece that's in townhall.com right now. In fact, it's kind of all over the internet right now. But it's talking about that. We got to get past this debt ceiling crisis. But part of what Moody's and Standard & Poor's, the rating agencies, what I get frustrated with is missing from this debt ceiling debate is it's not just about do we raise the debt ceiling. There's bigger pieces in our credit rating in America is do we have a plan to get out of this? We can't just keep borrowing, and as everyone keeps saying, or we're going to become like Greece. But what has happened in this country is that we have put our natural resources off limits. And if we had regulations and a government attitude that would encourage, now I'm not saying remove all regulations. I'm not saying we should rape the land. I'm not saying anything like that at all. But what I am saying is instead of making it so hard for people to extract the natural resources out of the earth and create new wealth, if our government encouraged that, and we're talking oil, we're talking gas, we're talking coal, we're talking uranium, but we're also talking copper, we're also talking tungsten, we're also talking rare earths, all of these things that are essential products and minerals for modern life. They're there. We have them, and America is rich with them. And if we had a government that said, you know what, we're going to encourage you. We're going to watch, yes, we're going to regulate, but we're going to encourage, instead of putting regulations that put you out of business, we're going to work with you and figure out how can we help you. If we had that attitude coming out of Washington, we would have money rolling into the federal coffers because there are people out there who are wanting to extract those resources, and their hands are being tied by the federal government. They're leaving this country, and a prime example is the drilling rigs leaving the Gulf and going to Africa and other places where they can be put to use. And they're leaving this country. If we said, come back, we want to help you, we want to work with you, and if we really did that instead of just giving lip service in some State of the Union address, we would see money rolling into the coffers. A Wall Street Journal had a piece out this week that talked about that there are the oil and gas industry, that's where the jobs are, and they are worried that they cannot find enough workers to fill the jobs that are available in that industry, and that's with the current regulatory environment. Imagine the jobs that would be there, and these are good-paying jobs. Imagine the jobs that would be there if the government helped.